Husband and sister slept together while I was giving birth and sent me a picture to rub it in. Now she's pregnant and begging me to forgive her because my ex-husband wants nothing to do with her. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My sister Veronica and I, let's just get this out of the way right now, we have never gotten along. It's not one of those things where we fought as kids but grew up to be best friends. No. Our relationship has always been bad, and I know my judgment of her is probably biased because of it, but I think after you hear everything, you'll understand why. She's a year older than me, I'm 31 now and she's 32, but that 1 year might as well have been a lifetime of her needing to be ahead, to be better, to be the one in the spotlight. Ever since we were little kids, she had this thing. This compulsion where she would constantly have to mimic me or outdo me. It was like she was a shadow that didn't just follow me, but actively tried to consume me. I remember back in middle school, I joined the debate club because I loved the idea of structured arguments. I was a quiet kid, but I liked having my thoughts in order. The very next day, Veronica, who had previously shown zero interest in anything academic, suddenly developed a lifelong passion for public speaking. She signed up, and for the rest of the semester, every debate became a personal war for her, not about the topic, but about scoring more points than me. If I took up chess, she'd be at the library that weekend, borrowing books on strategy, not because she liked the game, but because she was determined to checkmate me in front of the entire chess club. It was like if I found joy in something, anything at all, she was personally offended by it and had to prove she could do it better. I had this one special sport, something I'd been doing practically since I was old enough to walk. It was my sanctuary. The smell of the gymnasium, the familiar squeak of shoes on the polished floor, that was my world. As I grew up, I dedicated so much of my time to practicing. I'd be there after school, on weekends, sacrificing parties and hangouts. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I got pretty good at it. I was an expert, really. I had a shelf in my room full of awards, each one representing hundreds of hours of sweat and dedication. Then, when I was 14, my sister Veronica suddenly decided, out of the blue, that she wanted to compete in the exact same sport. To my complete and utter surprise, my parents allowed it. I think they were desperate for us to have something in common, a shared interest that might finally bring us closer. But she didn't have the commitment. She didn't want to put in the hours. She'd show up to practice late, yawning, and spend half the time complaining. Every chance she got, she would try to make fun of me, whispering little comments to the other kids, "Look at Audrey, she tries so hard, it's pathetic," or trying to downplay my skills in front of the coach. "Oh, that move? I could do that in my sleep," she'd say loudly, after I'd just spent a month perfecting it. When the competition day finally arrived, it was clear to everyone that she wasn't as polished as many of the other kids. She was clumsy, unfocused, and her routine was sloppy. Despite this, she walked around with this air of confidence, like she expected to be handed a big title just for showing up. Unfortunately for her, I ended up winning the top title that day. I remember the moment they called my name. A wave of pure joy washed over me. I saw my parents in the stands, their faces beaming with pride. I looked for Veronica, hoping, stupidly, that maybe she'd be happy for me. Instead, I saw her face twist into a mask of pure fury. And then, she threw a tantrum. A full-blown, screaming, crying fit, right there in front of everyone. She stomped her feet and wailed about how the judges were unfair, how it was rigged. It was mortifying. My parents, their faces bright red with embarrassment, had to grab her by the arm and promptly escort her out of the room. The car ride home was thick with a tense, suffocating silence. Later that night, at home, my parents tried to talk to her gently. I could hear their muffled voices through my bedroom wall. "Veronica, honey," my mom said, "everyone has their own strengths. You don't have to compete with Audrey on everything. We are proud of you no matter what," my dad added. "You don't need a trophy for us to love you." But Veronica just started yelling. You always take her side. You love her more, she screamed. Then, my bedroom door flew open. She stormed in, her face red and tear-streaked. I was sitting on my bed, carefully polishing my new award. She marched right up to me, snatched the award from my hands before I could react, and screamed, "If I can't have it, neither can you." Then she smashed it on the floor. It shattered into a dozen pieces. And my heart just broke with it. Unlike her, I had worked really, really hard to win these things. My parents reprimanded her, of course, but she didn't care. They even made her go to therapy for a while, but she would just sit there, arms crossed, tight-lipped, refusing to speak a single word about her jealousy and resentment towards me. After a few weeks of that, the therapist said there wasn't much more she could do if Veronica wouldn't cooperate. As we got older, she only got worse. Getting ready for school each morning was an exercise in humiliation. She'd stand in the doorway of my room, leaning against the frame with her arms crossed, and just pick me apart while I was getting dressed. "Are you really going to wear that? You look like a potato sack," she'd sneer. "Your hair is so flat. I'm honestly ashamed to be seen with you." For context, I've always been tall for my age, and slender, with long red hair. I preferred wearing baggy clothes, comfortable things, unlike my sister who was always in skirts and crop tops. But I knew I wasn't ugly. I would get a lot of male attention, even at that age, which I think only made her angrier. My mother would scold her for saying such mean things at home, so Veronica just took the bullying to school, where she knew she could get away with it. She would rub it in my face that she had cooler friends than I did, which basically meant she hung out with the popular crowd while I preferred to stick with a few people I genuinely enjoyed being around. I'm an introvert by nature, I wasn't loud and attention-seeking like her. She would stand in the hallways with her friends, a little coven of judgment, and they'd dissect everyone who walked by. And if I passed them on my way to class, she'd say, just loud enough for me to hear, "Oh, that's Audrey. She's not my real sister. She was probably adopted." It was a constant, low-grade torture. One day, I was sitting with my two best friends, Sarah and Chloe, at our usual lunch table in the corner of the cafeteria. We were laughing about a stupid movie we'd seen over the weekend. Suddenly, a shadow fell over our table. It was Veronica and her crew. She looked down at me, a smirk playing on her lips. "Still hanging out with the JV squad, I see," she said, loud enough for the tables around us to hear. "Don't you ever get tired of being so boring?" My face flushed hot with shame. Sarah told her to back off, but Veronica just laughed, a high, piercing sound, before she and her friends sauntered away, leaving me feeling small and exposed. During high school, when I was 15, I decided I needed an escape. I created my own website on WordPress. I had no idea what I was doing at first. I stayed up late for weeks, watching tutorials, teaching myself basic coding, and figuring out how to design a layout. It became my little corner of the world where I could just be myself. I loved writing, and I poured all my thoughts and feelings into that blog. Over time, something amazing happened. People started reading it. I managed to build a small following, then a bigger one. I amassed about 2,000 subscribers, which felt like a million back then. Soon, a few local stores, a boutique that sold handmade soap, a little bookstore, started to approach me to write about their products on my page. At first, they would just send me a free product. But as my blog started to gain more subscribers, I started to earn real money. It wasn't a fortune, but for a teenager, it was incredible. I remember getting my first check in the mail. It was for $50. I just stared at it, feeling this overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. My parents initially had no idea about this, but then they were so surprised and proud that I was earning a small salary from something I genuinely enjoyed. My dad, bless his heart, took me to the bank that weekend. He sat with me and the bank manager and helped me open my first real bank account, with him as a co-owner until I turned 18. "This is for your future, Audrey," he said, his eyes beaming. "For your college fund." When my sister found out, her reaction was predictably awful. She cornered me in the kitchen one evening. "I heard you're making money from that stupid little website," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You need to share it with me. It's not fair that you're earning money and I'm not." I just looked at her. "No," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not sharing it. I worked for this. You're welcome to try it yourself." She tried to get my parents to back her up, but for once, they held firm. So, she decided to start her own blog. Initially, she was insufferably arrogant about it. "This is so easy," she'd mock. "Anyone can do it. I'm a way better writer than you anyway." But when she got no increase in subscribers after a few weeks, she became incredibly frustrated. She'd storm into my room, demanding to know my secrets. One night, she came in with her laptop. "Okay, Audrey, here's the deal," she said, in a tone that was supposed to sound reasonable but just came off as demanding. "You have to promote my new article on your blog. Put a link at the top of your homepage." "Why would I do that?" I asked. "Because we're sisters," she said, as if that explained everything. "Sisters are supposed to share everything. It'll barely cost you anything, and it'll help me a lot." "No, Veronica," I said, turning back to my homework. "You insulted my blog for weeks. You called my writing stupid. And now you want my help?" "The answer is no." She huffed and puffed and called me selfish, but I stood my ground. After a few more months of seeing no results, she gave up on that dream, leaving a trail of angry, unfinished blog posts in her wake. When it came time for college, the battlefield shifted again. Our mom had gone to a prestigious Ivy League school, a place we both aspired to go to. Veronica applied there, as well as to another, even more prestigious Ivy League. She was so confident she would get in. She spent weeks bragging about the amazing essay she wrote. She was rejected from both. She had to enroll in a university in our city, which was a nice school, don't get me wrong, but in her eyes, it was a colossal failure. When it was my turn to apply a year later, she was relentlessly negative. She'd find me studying at the kitchen table and say things like, "You shouldn't even bother applying to those schools. If I didn't get in, there's no way that you will." I'd point out that my grades were excellent, my extracurriculars were strong, but she'd just shake her head. "It's not about grades, Audrey. It's about personality. And your personality just isn't right for those places." I didn't listen to her. I applied to my mom's Ivy League school. And I was accepted. When I got the email, my heart was pounding. But my first feeling wasn't joy. It was a cold, sinking dread. I was afraid of telling her. My parents decided they would be the ones to break the news, to try and soften the blow. They waited until she came over for dinner the following weekend. The whole meal was tense. I remember sitting at the table, my stomach in knots, just pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Veronica," he said gently, "we have some wonderful news. Audrey was accepted into Mom's alma mater." The silence that followed was deafening. Veronica slowly placed her fork down. A strange, tight smile appeared on her face. "No, she wasn't," she said calmly. "Yes, she was," my mom said, holding up the acceptance letter I had printed out. Veronica snatched it from her hand. Her eyes scanned the page, and her face turned pale. "This is fake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It has to be fake. I was a much better student than she is. I'm smarter than her. My parents and I were just so tired of her antics. I had never seen her as my competition, but she saw me as her sworn enemy." My dad tried to reason with her. "Veronica, can't you just congratulate your sister?" My mom urged her, again, to see a therapist. "Honey, this jealousy isn't healthy." That's when she snapped. She jumped up from her chair, knocking it over. "I'm not the problem," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. She is. You've always loved her more. I was your first child. I never even wanted a sibling. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the house, slamming the front door so hard that a picture frame fell off the wall. Ever since then, I made up my mind. I was done. I would keep my distance from her. I was going to college to build my own life, far away from her poisonous shadow. College really did change me. The 1,000 miles of distance from Veronica was like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. For the first time, I could breathe. I focused on my studies, I made new friends, real friends, and I could join a club without worrying that she'd show up the next day to sabotage it. As the years unfolded, I discovered new passions that were entirely my own, and I relished the freedom of just being myself. While I hoped my sister would find her own path, our relationship remained strained. When she couldn't compete with me academically anymore, the competition just morphed. It shifted to our personal lives. She was always passive-aggressive when I got a boyfriend before she did. His name was Warren, and he was wonderful. He was kind, smart, and funny, and he made me feel seen. When Warren and I decided to move in together after graduation, Veronica never missed a chance to make a snide comment. "Oh, playing house, are we?" she'd say during family phone calls. "Hope you know what you're doing." Eventually, she found a guy named Russell who seemed perfect for her, and her mean comments started to mellow out. I could sense she had this deep-seated desire to get married first, to be the first to have kids, but honestly, it didn't bother me. I was happy with Warren, and we were in no rush. Then, that Christmas, she gathered the family together and announced that she and Russell were getting married the following year. And I was genuinely happy for her. I gave her a big hug and congratulated them both. And she hugged me back. It was the first time she'd hugged me without it feeling forced in a very, very long time. For a moment, just a fleeting moment, I thought we had finally, after all these years, taken a step towards mending our broken relationship. I was so naive. In the months following my sister's wedding announcement, life took an unexpected and tragic turn. We received a call from Warren's younger brother. He was only 24, a bright, vibrant kid with his whole life ahead of him. His doctor had just told him that he was dealing with a very aggressive, very rare form of cancer. The news was like a physical blow. Without a moment's hesitation, we packed our bags and rushed to his side to offer our support. We spent weeks living out of a suitcase in a sterile guest room, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and fear. Warren was incredibly close with his brother, and I could see him crumbling under the weight of it all. They had lost their father at a very young age, so they knew how painful it was to lose a loved one. The hospital visits were grueling. I'd sit for hours, holding his brother's hand, reading to him, trying to bring some small sliver of normalcy to his terrifying new reality. One night, after a particularly difficult day at the hospital, Warren and I were sitting in the quiet of his parents' backyard. He was just staring up at the stars, silent. Then he turned to me, his eyes full of a pain I'd never seen before, and he asked me to marry him. I was surprised. We had discussed getting married, of course, but I didn't think he would do it at a time like this. He told me, his voice thick with emotion, how he was terrified that his brother might not live to see us get married. And because he loved me and wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, he didn't see any reason why we should delay it any longer. "I want him to be my best man, Audrey," he whispered. "I want him to see it." I understood his perspective completely, and I agreed. I loved him, and I also recognized the profound happiness it would bring his little brother and the rest of his family in such a dark time. We both agreed that we weren't the type for extravagant weddings. We just wanted a simple celebration, a quiet ceremony in his parents' backyard, surrounded by our nearest and dearest. His family and his brother were overjoyed when they learned of our engagement. I watched his little brother, frail as he was, cry tears of pure joy and hug us both so tightly. It was one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking moments of my life. The only thing that nagged at the back of my head was my sister's wedding, which was also approaching. I didn't want her to become competitive again. I thought we were too old now to be this immature. So, I decided to do the right thing. I decided to call her and have a talk with her first, before I even informed my own parents. I wanted to handle it with care. I found a quiet moment and stepped outside. I dialed her number, my heart pounding a little. I knew she was aware of Warren's brother's health situation. I started by asking how she was, how the wedding planning was going. Then, I gently shared the news about the proposal and carefully explained that we planned to have a very small, very quiet wedding in a couple of days, with just his family and my parents. I stressed that it wasn't a big celebration, just something meaningful for his brother. My intention was to ensure she could still have her big, beautiful wedding as planned, and that I was not trying to overshadow anything. I told her how much it meant to Warren's little brother that he could be a part of our celebration. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, her voice, cold as ice, came through. "You have got to be kidding me." "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. "You're using a dying person as an excuse to get married before me," she hissed. "You're that jealous, aren't you? You couldn't stand me having one thing, just one thing, that was mine." I was so stunned I couldn't speak. "Veronica, that's not true," I finally stammered. "This has nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me," she shrieked, her voice rising. "This is why I have always hated you, ever since you were born. You always have to be the center of attention." I just broke down. I was already having such a difficult time, and her cruelty was like a physical blow. "I called you first, Veronica," I sobbed into the phone. "You were the very first person in my family I told, because I thought for once, just once, we could be happy for each other." But she was beyond reason. She yelled that I was a jealous snob and that she would never, ever attend my wedding. And then she screamed something so vile, so hateful, that it will be burned into my memory forever. She screamed, "I wish it was Warren who was dying. I wish he'd die instead of his brother, then you wouldn't be getting married at all." I hung up. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. I started to doubt my decision, wondering if I was, in fact, doing something wrong. But when I talked to my parents, they were horrified by Veronica's behavior. They assured me that I was not doing anything wrong and that they were so happy for us. They told me that regardless of what Veronica said, they would be on the next flight out to attend my wedding. We had the wedding 2 days later. It was small and intimate, in the backyard, just as we wanted. Warren's brother stood beside him as his best man, smiling through his pain. It was beautiful and sad and perfect. A few days later, I uploaded some pictures on social media. Almost immediately, my phone rang. It was Veronica. I thought maybe she was calling to apologize. But instead, she demanded that I delete the pictures. "You have to take them down now," she ordered. "I don't want anyone finding out you got married before me. After my wedding, you can post them." I refused. "That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard, Veronica," I said, my voice cold. "I am done. I am done trying to make things right with you. You can hate me as much as you want. Just leave me alone." She called me an insufferable witch and officially uninvited me from her wedding before slamming down the phone. I told myself I was fine with it. I told myself I didn't care. Warren and I settled into married life. He had a high-pressure job and couldn't take any more time off, so we flew back home right after the wedding. He was an incredibly attentive and devoted husband. It felt like, despite all the sadness and the family drama, we were going to be okay. A few months later, Veronica got married to Russell as planned. Even though I wasn't there, I sent her a huge bouquet of flowers and a heartfelt note congratulating her. I saw her wedding pictures online. She looked happy. I truly hoped she was. But just a few weeks after their honeymoon, my mother called, her voice grave. Veronica had been cheating on Russell with a coworker, and he had found out. It was a huge, messy scandal. Veronica tried to defend herself by bizarrely claiming she wanted an open marriage, but Russell, a traditional and kind man, was heartbroken. He immediately filed for an annulment. We all felt so terribly for him. As if this wasn't bad news enough for our family, Warren's brother passed away just a week later. The funeral was one of the hardest days of my life. My husband was a complete wreck, a hollowed-out version of the man I knew. And in the weeks and months that followed, something inside him just broke. He was never the same again. He wasn't attentive or loving anymore. He became withdrawn and angry, lashing out over the smallest things. If I asked what he wanted for dinner, he'd snap that I was bothering him. If I tried to hug him, he'd stiffen and pull away. I begged him to go to grief counseling, but he refused. He stopped going to his office, and eventually, his boss called to say he was let go. He would just sit in his pajamas all day, the curtains drawn, playing video games or watching sports, the volume turned up loud to drown out the world. I was a paramedic, working grueling 12-hour shifts, and suddenly I was the sole breadwinner, trying to hold our lives together while he was actively letting them fall apart. I started noticing other things. He would hide his phone, angling the screen away from me whenever I entered the room. He'd take mysterious phone calls in the garage. He would constantly ask me when I was coming home from work, but not in a sweet way. It was more like he was tracking my movements, urging me to pick up overtime shifts or go out with friends after work. He was spending money we didn't have on expensive gadgets and clothes for himself. Our joint savings account started to dwindle. I felt so alone. I tried to talk to him, to reach him, but it was like talking to a brick wall. One evening, I made his favorite dinner and tried to have a real conversation. "Warren, we can't go on like this," I said softly. "I'm worried about you. I'm worried about us." He just kept his eyes glued to the TV and said, "I'm fine. Just leave me alone." During this incredibly stressful time, I found out I was 3 months pregnant. I hadn't been getting my periods, but I had assumed it was due to the stress of my job and my crumbling marriage. Never in a billion years did I imagine I'd be pregnant. When I told Warren, I showed him the positive test, my hands shaking. He just glanced at it and gave a non-committal shrug. No smile, no hug, no emotion at all. Just nothing. "Listen to me," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "If you don't want to be a father, if this is not what you want, you are welcome to walk away from this marriage right now. I will not hold it against you." He finally looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes. "No, of course I'm happy," he said, the words sounding hollow and rehearsed. "I'm happy for us." But he wasn't. My pregnancy was hell. I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum, which is basically a severe, relentless form of morning sickness. I was sick all day, every day. I couldn't keep food down. I lost weight. The smell of cooking would send me running to the bathroom. I was so weak I had to take a leave of absence from my job. For 4 months, I was essentially bedridden. My parents had to come over constantly to help with basic household chores because I was too unwell to do anything. Through all this, Warren, who had managed to get a new job, was completely unsupportive. He would come home from work and see the messy house and me, pale and exhausted on the sofa, and he would sigh with theatrical annoyance. One night, he came home to find me crying in the kitchen because I'd tried to make dinner and had gotten sick all over the floor. He didn't help me clean it up. He just looked at me with disgust and said, "Are you always this dramatic? Some women actually enjoy being pregnant." He called me lazy. He called me a burden. On the day my water broke, I was home alone. The first contraction hit me so hard it took my breath away. I grabbed my phone and called Warren. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called him 12 times in a row. He did not pick up once. I sent him a frantic text, "My water broke. Baby is coming. Meet me at the hospital." Then I called my parents, who rushed over to get me. As I lay in the hospital bed, writhing in pain, my mom holding one hand and my dad stroking my forehead, I kept glancing at my phone, praying for a message from Warren. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, as a particularly strong contraction was subsiding, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. My mother, thinking it might finally be Warren, picked it up to check. I saw her face change. Her eyes widened in shock, and all the color drained from her cheeks. She just stared at the screen, her mouth slightly open. "What is it?" I asked, my voice strained. "Mom, what's wrong?" She wouldn't answer me. She just shook her head, looking like she was going to be sick herself. "Please," I begged, tears welling in my eyes as a terrible dread washed over me. "Please, just tell me." Without a word, she handed me the phone. Her hand was trembling. I opened my messages. And there it was. A picture. It was a picture of my sister, Veronica, and my husband, Warren, lying together in bed. They were smiling, looking cozy. And underneath the picture was a message from Veronica. It said, "Good luck being a single mother, because I have taken your husband." The world went silent. I couldn't hear the beeping of the hospital monitors, I couldn't feel the pain of the contractions. All I could see was that picture, that message, burning into my brain. I was speechless. I think I went into shock. Then, a primal rage, hotter and more intense than any physical pain, surged through me. I grabbed the phone and I called Warren. He picked up on the fourth ring. "Hey, what's up?" he asked, his voice casual, like I was calling to ask him to pick up milk. I started screaming. I don't even remember what I said, it was just a torrent of pain and fury. "What the hell are you doing with my sister?" I finally managed to choke out. And he just replied, his voice calm, "I've fallen in love with her, Audrey." He explained, as if he were discussing the weather, that she had reached out to him after his brother died, offering support. They had been talking for a while. One thing led to another, and they had been having an affair behind my back for months. "I was going to tell you," he said, his voice laced with pathetic self-pity. "I wanted to wait until after the baby was born. But Veronica, she didn't want to keep up the lies anymore. But I knew better. I knew Veronica. She had waited, knowingly, for this exact moment. The moment I was at my most vulnerable, my most raw, to plunge the knife in as deeply as she possibly could." He started to apologize, but I cut him off. "I don't care about your apologies," I snarled. "I'll see you in court." I cried through the rest of my delivery. I cried from the heartbreak, I cried from the rage, I cried from the physical pain. But through all that darkness, my daughter, Eleanor, was born healthy and beautiful, and at that moment, holding her in my arms, I knew I had to be strong for her. If you're still listening, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below. That lets me know you've given me a like, and it tells me you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please, comment the number 1, and then let me tell you the rest of my story. My mother cried tears of joy when Eleanor was born, and later my dad wouldn't stop staring at my baby, his eyes full of love for her and a quiet, simmering fury for what had been done to me. All my family and friends rallied around me. They came to the hospital, bringing gifts and offering support. I made sure every single one of them knew exactly what Veronica and Warren had done. My parents called Veronica that very day. My dad did the talking. He told her that they were done with her, that what she had done was unforgivable. He told her she should never call them her parents again because they were ashamed to have given birth to her. He explicitly told her she was being removed from their will, and any inheritance she might have hoped for was gone forever. Veronica apparently tried to protest, babbling about how she and Warren were in love, but my dad just said, "You are on your own now," and hung up. We all blocked her number. Some of my cousins sent her some truly nasty messages, and I didn't lift a finger to stop them. I also informed Warren's mother. She was shocked and heartbroken. She tried to talk to Warren, to reason with him, but it was far too late. I was going to divorce his sorry ass, and nothing was going to stop me. The day I was discharged from the hospital, I didn't go back to the house I had shared with him. I went to my parents' house. They helped me move all my things out while I stayed with the baby. Warren did try to confront me a week later. He showed up at my parents' house, begging to see me. He said he'd been thinking that his mother had helped him see the light, that he'd made a huge mistake. I just looked at him through the window and told my dad I wouldn't see him. I called my lawyer the very next day. I refused to let Warren see Eleanor until we had a court order in place. I didn't trust him. His actions were unhinged, and I wouldn't expose my daughter to that. The divorce proceedings were ugly. Warren fought hard against paying alimony, but my lawyer was brilliant. She presented the evidence of his affair, the text message, the timing, everything, and the judge did not look kindly on him for cheating on his wife while she was pregnant and in labor. For custody, I was granted primary physical custody. He was allowed to see Eleanor, but only with supervision. My lawyer successfully argued that his recent history of aggressive behavior and depression, combined with the cruel nature of the affair's reveal, made him a potential risk. It's been 8 months now since the divorce was finalized. Warren sends his child support checks on time, but that's about it. He hardly ever uses his supervised visitation rights. He's tried to apologize a few more times, but I just ignore him. I've gone back to my job as a paramedic. It's hard, juggling the long shifts and a new baby, but my mom is a saint and helps babysit. Eleanor is my entire world. She is the only reason I've been able to keep going. Then, yesterday, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I had to for work. When I picked up, I heard her voice. Audrey? It was Veronica. I froze. I hadn't heard her voice in almost a year. She started talking quickly, begging me not to hang up, saying she'd been trying to reach me for months and had to use a friend's phone. I have nothing to say to you, Veronica, I said, my voice cold. Please, you have to listen, she rushed to say. Eleanor. Eleanor is going to have a brother very soon. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. A mix of shock, disgust, and rage swept over me. What are you talking about? I demanded. And she told me. She's pregnant. With Warren's child. She continued, her voice taking on a whiny, pleading tone, saying how I should forgive her now, for the sake of her child, how we were both mothers now, and we should move past our differences for the children. I just stared at the wall, my knuckles white from gripping my phone. Let me be perfectly clear, Veronica, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I do not care if you are pregnant. I do not care about your child. I want nothing to do with you, ever again. That's when she started screaming. She screamed about how because of me, our parents and the whole family had abandoned her, how no one would return her calls. She cried about how Warren refused to accept the pregnancy and was pressuring her to get an abortion, and how she had no one to help her. I laughed. I actually let out a short, harsh laugh. You're complaining to me about being alone during a pregnancy? I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. You, who sent me a picture of you in bed with my husband while I was literally giving birth. You made your bed, Veronica. Now lie in it. I told her to enjoy being a single mother with no support system, and then I hung up and blocked the number. Since that call, I've been a wreck. Some of my friends think I did the right thing, but a few think I'm being too cruel. And a small part of me feels a sliver of guilt, knowing how hard it is. So I wanted to share my story, the whole story, to get an unbiased opinion. Am I the bad guy here? Okay, so, a lot has happened in the last few months. First, I want to clarify that I blame Warren just as much as I blame my sister. But the betrayal from Veronica cut deeper because she's my sister. All I ever wanted was a big sister, and instead, I got a lifelong rival and a bully. I will never forgive her. However, after that call, I did talk to my parents. I told them that while I would not have a relationship with her, they were free to choose for themselves. About 3 months after that, my dad, unable to stand the unknown, decided to call Warren. He wanted the full story. And Warren, now completely isolated and miserable, told him everything. He said after our divorce, Veronica lost interest in him almost immediately. The thrill of the chase, of winning, was over. She dropped him and started dating other men. He was hurt and tried to get her back, but she wanted nothing to do with him. Then, weeks later, she called him out of the blue to tell him she was pregnant. He admitted he'd asked her to consider not going through with it, since they weren't together and had no future. And this is the part that made my blood run cold. Veronica told Warren her reason for keeping the baby. She said, "Audrey gets to be a mother. Now it's my turn. I want to be a mother just like her." It was never about the baby. It was never about Warren. It was, and always had been, about me. It was just another sick, twisted competition in her mind. Warren told my dad he'd pay child support, as required by law, but he wanted no relationship with the child. After that call, my parents finally understood. They saw that Veronica hadn't changed at all. I told them I was moving out. I couldn't live there forever, and more importantly, I needed to protect Eleanor from ever getting caught in that web of toxicity. I started looking for apartments the next day. And now, for the final update. It's been 5 months since then. I did it. Eleanor and I have our own little 2-bedroom apartment. It was hard, packing up our lives and starting over, but it was the best decision I've ever made. I hired a wonderful babysitter, a warm, grandmotherly woman who adores Eleanor, for when I'm at work. It feels so good to have our own space. Being a single parent is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I am managing, one day at a time. Veronica gave birth to a baby boy. My mother was the only one who went to the hospital. My dad refused. My mom said she had a long, hard talk with Veronica. She told her how deeply she had disappointed everyone. She made it clear the only reason she was there was for her innocent grandson. Veronica begged for forgiveness, but my mother told her, "Our relationship is done. You have broken something that can't be fixed." I know that must have killed my mom to say, but I'm proud of her for protecting her own peace. My dad still wants nothing to do with her. Warren now pays child support for 2 children he barely sees, by 2 sisters who no longer speak. The whole situation is an embarrassing, heartbreaking mess. I won't lie, I still have bad days. I've spent many nights crying into my pillow after Eleanor is asleep. The betrayal still feels fresh sometimes. That's why I started going to therapy. My therapist is helping me understand that healing isn't a straight line. But every morning, I wake up, and I walk into Eleanor's room. I see her smiling at me from her crib, and I know I made the right choice. I'm building a life for us, a life free of toxicity, a life filled with peace and genuine love. And that, right there, is a victory Veronica can never, ever take from me. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar or just want to share your thoughts, please leave a comment below. It really helps to know that I'm not alone in this. And please, like this video and subscribe for more stories. It means the world to me.